Got some little pups in here. Can you get the door?
Sure. All right.
So one thing you need to know is that these pups are 6 weeks on Wednesday, and they just took their first ever car ride, right? And it's awesome to socialize these guys at like a young age, but you don't want to put them in that danger zone either. Remember we talked about risk and danger? So we're not going to be like passing them around from person to person, because that would be a lot, but you guys are more than welcome to come say hi. A lot of times the pups have a little, we call it star, but just a little piece of fur that's that's lighter on the top of their forehead.
I call that an angel kiss.
Angel kiss, all right. So day one.
That's Ruby. Now, Ruby is Nolly's niece. So that's the first day. She had 10 pups. There was a place for every pup at the table. However, because it was just barely enough room, you had to be careful if there's a tiny pup. They might not get the nursing that they really need. So we did have one tiny pup that was half the size of the other pups. So I did lose quite a bit of sleep the first couple of weeks, because I'd have to go down for every nursing and hold the baby just like this and make sure that the other bigger pups didn't push her aside. But it would make sense, right, that if you breed for a particular temperament and you do it year after year after year, most of the pups will have that temperament that I'm after.
It's very important not to have people come over and socialize them at that age, because you don't want to interrupt their sleep cycle.
Correct. See how Nolly's like 43 pounds soaking wet? That's pretty small for a retriever, but nature likes variety. So in any litter, you'll still have a pup that might be a little on the quiet side. You might have a pup that's a little on the randy side. They're still great pups, but I think it's up to us to decide what's the best job for our pup. And some pups are not up for a working role, but they might still be really great pets. Because dogs are simple creatures, the genetics of a dog is very important in terms of the temperament. And if we're talking about social emotional assistance dogs for, let's say, children with autism, children with Down syndrome, children who are facing a loss, children who are coming from foster care into an adoptive home, really anyone who has an unusual challenge, these kind of dogs can be very helpful. Now, when I was young, they used to say, is it nature or is it nurture forming the temperament? But really, it's an interaction of both. You can't say it's one or the other. So I breed carefully, but from day one, I've been socializing them. And today, you're helping us to socialize them. So I really appreciate it.
Week 2.
All right, week 2, that's my favorite age, 2 to 3 weeks. You'll see 10 little pups just looking at you like, what now, Patty? You know, teach me about life. And they start to get personalities really quick. They start to see and they start to hear. The socially talented pups, they'll look over the edge of the whelping box and say, oh my goodness, there's a whole world out there. And so you want to be right there for them when they're ready to discover things. And as Chris points out, you don't want to put them in over the head when they're not ready for the stress of it. And then see how they all sleep on top of one another? If you think about it, that's very much how they position themselves before they were born. So during naps, they just find each other.
This is when they start to become hardier a little bit and can be held and stuff. It's important to get the pups trusting you from the beginning. So, like, moving them through the air, getting them comfortable with with falling asleep with someone.
Attention's where it's at, especially if we're talking about autism. Most kids on the spectrum are super smart. And if there's difficulty in educating them, it has to do with capturing their attention and moving it to where you want them to focus. There's a whole lot that we can learn even at this very young stage, and nothing real complicated. But I want to teach this young man who's going to have a pup, I want to teach him how fragile his pup is. I want to teach him about how his pup is like him as well as how his pup is unlike him. so that when this young man has the pup in his home, and let's say the pup is taking a needed nap, I don't want the young man to say, well, I want to play, so I'm going to wake you up and I'm going to play. So that's what I'm talking to him about as we're getting to know the pup, is I'm telling him, you know, the pup's not like you. The pup has different needs, and because you're going to be the caretaker, you have to factor the pup's needs in above your own. That's a skill. That's kind of hard to do. But if you're going to have a pup, that's one of the things that you have to be able to do.
You know, that position of like vulnerability, because this is where the trust starts, is this is when pups can start to remember people by their smell and form a relationship. So,
All right, so here's week 4, and this is a really fun age.
we talked about this before. Why do you think that the act of a dog eating is a social, like, relationship-based thing to them?
That's how they got to meet people, because people would feed them.
I think you just described how dogs became domesticated. Think about cavemen around their fires, right? And they're throwing the bones after they eat them, sort of at the edge of the fire. So the bravest wolves that had the biggest capacity to trust people would sidle closer to the fire. And then after a while, the mothers who are about to have a litter of pups realized these people could really help us. We should really partner up.
I talked about this briefly last week about how, like, when puppies bite each other and fight and stuff, like, maybe your first reaction would be to, like, guys, break it up, break it up.
Right.
But really, they're teaching each other about, like, the strength of their bite.
And a pup might misjudge the strength of their jaws. So the pup that they are fighting with and accidentally hurt will let out this high-pitched squeal. One thing that's really interesting is all the pups stop playing. All the pups, like, look around like, what happened? The pup that ended up hurting the other pup looks mortified, and none of the other pups play with him for about a minute. And then all is forgiven, and they just start all over again.
Dogs in general like to interact with things through their mouth, whether it's licking or bite, nipping or something like that. And also they start to want to interact with people. Obviously, this is the first chance that you can tell them, like, this is what I want, and that'll just make it easier down the road. But that's not to say if you don't do that, they'll be biting you the rest of your life, but it would just make your job easier.
Wait till they've got the ability to learn from the scold that you give. And I don't scold a pup until they hit adolescence. Up till then, it's all about, as Chris points out, distraction or sleight of hand. 5 weeks old. Then you see the pups. Remember I told you they start to say, oh, there's a world outside the whooping box, isn't there? And this is when the jig is up. They just totally get that. He's offering his pup a toy. So that meets my agenda of saying, we have to think about the pup's needs, because that's what he's all about. The whole ride home, his parents were really gearing him up to be able to give his pup, really his first toy. We won't be done working with him, by the way, for 2 whole years. I am a therapist, so what I'm trying to do is get a tool to work with children to meet their social emotional needs. But once we get the tool all up and running, then that's actually when we do the therapy. Okay, so week 6.
It's all about socialization and just getting them to be comfortable wherever they are, making them understand that you can trust not just us, but like anybody who holds them, interacts with them, that like humans should be trusted.
So I feel like my work can be very simple because see how she's focusing on the pup? While she's giving that quality of attention, we really want to make hay while the sun shines. We want to throw a lot of language in there.
When Nolly meets somebody, she always assumes the best. She always assumes that they love her and will treat her right.
Every day, Nolly just gets more positive associations, and dogs are associative creatures. So let's say the mailman kicks the dog every time he goes to deliver letters. That dog's gonna really hate people in postal uniforms. They're associative. It'd be very hard to break that habit. So we really have to watch a dog's experiences. That's much more important than cut and dried training. I don't even let people talk about training in North Star's work until we're done with adolescence. Then the dog can modify his behavior, and then we can start to think more about cut and dried training. Till then, I really think it's all about socialization and creating those good associations. This is Rusty. So Rusty right there, he's about 4 months old, and that's on the right, that's Rusty when he was in a puppy raising home, and the dog he's with, that's Cooper, and that's a North Star dog too. So you can see how much love and support Rusty was getting. So Rusty joined his boy. It was a really successful visit.
You can do it.
Hi, Rusty.
So here's Rusty.
Oh. This is his Teddy.
Patty, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Nice to meet you. Oh, hey, Gabe, what are you doing? Hey, my youngest son, Gabe. Say hi, Gabe. Hey, Gabe.
Oh, hi, Gabe. How are ya? Here we go. Where's Luke? Where's Luke? There he is. Say hi. This is Rusty. Hi. Hi, Luke. Yeah, he loves boys. He says this is fun.
Is he staying? Rusty's staying.
Yeah, Rusty's staying, yeah.
He's a nice boy, huh? Hey, in that bag there might be a Rusty toy. See in that big boy bag? Okay. Yeah.
Is that a donut?
Yeah, that's Rusty's donut. That's Rusty's donut.
Yeah, it's a donut toy.
Yeah, it's a donut toy for Rusty. Say thank you. I think I'll go downstairs and. Can we do that? Okay, come on, Rusty. Let's see if we can get Rusty to sit. Luke, can you tell Rusty to sit?
Sit.
Quit, try that again.
Sit. Sit. Sit.
Oh, I'm sorry. He thought you said kiss. Right? Did he kiss you? Oh, now he's sitting. See? See?
Luke was asking before he came, what do you think Rusty's afraid of?
I think Rusty's afraid of new things. And your house is brand new and you're brand new. So what we can do is we can tell Rusty it's all right and petting him when we say it is good.
So no
I'm
one's
going to make
nervous?
him happy.
Oh, okay.
Notion.
Oh, you're going to get rid of the notion of nervousness?
Make it simple.
Yeah, that would be good. Yep, yep.
So we're going to
Yes, that's my old friend Karen Carpenter's song, and my son Dan's deft editing touch.
That's a very
I get you. Yeah, no, I totally get what he's doing. He's very in touch with his emotions. He's also very aware of everything I'm saying to his mom. This is something we should all keep in mind when we're talking about children on the spectrum, even those who are nonverbal. So you're making him feel better?
It's working.
Is that what you're thinking?
The concept is, I think, means
Ending it, yeah.
ending it.
Ending the nervousness, bringing on the happiness.
Bring in the happy.
Let's bring in the happy. Yay! I know how to do that. I know how to do that with my puppies. Here.
Now we bring in the happiness.
We're bringing in the happy. Yay for bringing in the happy. Very nice. You like Danny, don't you? I like Danny too. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. Everybody's happy in this room.
I'm hungry.
Okay.
I want Oreos.
Great emotion makes me hungry too, so I can relate. This also gives us a chance to catch up with younger brother Gabe. And we found him in his room and received an invitation to see his favorite
Can
books.
Rusty see the book? Are you being good teacher?
And by the way, getting these two on the same literal page is fun to do, and it is easy to socialize a pup to be a great reading buddy. Luke does it. That's especially good. Look, he's looking. He's reading.
I think he's a curious George fan. Oh, that's right. George got a dog for his birthday.
Typically.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, oh, look at that. Look at that. Well, it's your 6-month birthday almost, not 1 year.
my
He's
6
still a
months.
baby. He's just a baby, really. He's actually very young. He's probably like,
Is he still a kid?
he's definitely still a kid. No question about that. You're just my kid,
Is-
right?
Yeah, Mommy.
So I can make it look real simple, and in a way it is, but it's just about being consistent, being kind, being consistently kind. That's probably the biggest thing, right?
Right.
Thank you.